Crescent City Crime contains violent and explicit content that is not suitable for a younger audience. Certain topics may be disturbing or triggering to some listeners. Listen at your own risk. Thank you for supporting the podcast by listening to Crescent City Crime. Please help spread the word of the podcast by telling a friend about us. You may help further support the show by leaving us a 5-star review on your preferred podcasting platform. We are also on Patreon at Crescent City Crime. Check the episode description for source links, as well as links to our social media accounts. The music used in this introduction is called The Black Fingerprint, and it was composed by Dylan Owen. Welcome to Crescent City Crime, dear listeners. I'm Tracy.
And I'm Brian.
And thank you for keeping your ears on us. Thank you for listening to us week after week. And if you are new here, we welcome you.
Thank you very much. We have fun doing this, but we would really appreciate it when people listen to what we do.
And we also would love it very, very much if you could leave us a review or tell a friend about us. Word of mouth is always going to be a great way to spread the word about something.
Yes, very much. And, coming from people they know, they'll be more likely to share your enjoyment of our podcast.
Yes. Well, Brian, so, I have been thinking this week about prison breaks. How hard do you think it would be to break out of the prison currently, Angola prison?
It is extremely hard, but keep in mind that inmates are spending 100 of their time behind bars with lots and lots and lots of time on their hands. Plenty of time to think about anything and everything you want to think about. And of course, some of these inmates can study what the staff is doing, study the staff's routine.
Right.
And look for weak points, look for openings, opportunities to do a variety of things, really.
That's very true. And infamously, Charles Manson, when he was in prison, had to have prison guards rotated out on a regular basis because he knew how to mess with them.
Yeah. He had nothing better to do at all, and someone of his intelligence makes a very dangerous criminal.
Very much so. Now, have you ever heard the name Charlie Frazier?
Yeah, I have heard the name, yes.
Okay, how much do you actually know about Charlie Frazier? So, I know you heard the name, right?
Right.
But who was he?
An escapee from Angola?
He was much more than that. He was... Now, but before I really get into the story, though, I do want to mention that this was one of the most difficult things to find information on. Most of it came from a newspapers.com clipping in which Peter Tattersall of the New York Times discussed the book he wrote about Charles Frazier. I could not locate the book, but I still managed to cobble together some information. Charlie Frazier was a 1930s era gangster, Tommy guns and bank robbing.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, but keep in mind, it wasn't all Tommy guns. The BAR, Browning Automatic Rifle, and 308 of late World War I fame and then later World War II fame was also favored by gangsters. In fact, Bonnie and Clyde used a BAR that had the barrel cut down. So they could so it was more handy inside of, from firing from within a vehicle.
That's good to know.
So, but, the movies and TV shows from the gangster era, they just use Tommy guns.
I think it's because they look cool.
They do look cool, whether it's the Marine Corps version from World War II, which has a traditional, forward,
slide?
The
barrel drum?
The heat shield. The heat shield underneath the barrel, you see?
Yeah.
So, whereas the Chicago typewriter version that was popular for movies, involving gangsters, has that foregrip.
Right, yes.
On it. that the foregrip really made the Tommy gun look, quite the sexy gun, along with the 50-round drum magazine,
right,
as well. So, yes, it was really sexy in the movies.
Well, Charlie Frazier was sort of that type of guy. He was frequently in prison, which is probably no surprise to you. And he would often show up at the hospital complaining of gunshot wounds. His resume boasts 52 bank robberies, 17 murders, 6 kidnappings, 18 prison escapes, and 11 gunshot wounds.
Wow. I mean, all of that. I mean, this all of that says gangster.
Very much so.
For sure.
I mean, just imagine like what a life that was for a minute. Always, constantly getting into trouble, getting into prison, escaping prison, being shot. That's a lot for one person.
Not having a problem killing people.
Not having a problem killing or kidnapping people.
Obviously, a psychopath.
Yes. On September 10th, 1933, Charlie Frazier led the biggest prison break from Angola. There was a riot and a standoff between Frazier and 10 other inmates, in which 2 prison guards and a trustee were killed. 6 other people were also wounded. Frazier and his cohorts were eventually captured and put back into prison. And that breakout was the largest in Angola's history. And this is what led to the construction of the Red Hat Block. I'm sure you're familiar with the Red Hat Block. I remember touring it when I went to Angola prison. It was it was like that cell block that was literally just concrete walls, concrete slabs for beds. There was a drain in the middle, so like you basically did your business on the floor. And the bars were completely open. Well, I'm sorry, not open. Like the bar, like there were bars, right? But there was no coverings over the windows or the doors, so you were completely exposed to the elements. And the people who were in the Red Hat prison block would have their straw hats were painted red, so they could easily be identified while working in the fields of Angola. It was that prison break that essentially made state officials or Angola officials, I'm not entirely sure who, made them decide that that sort of cell block was needed. And this cell block, just as a historical reference, was in use until 1972.
Wow. 1972.
Yes, it was until 1972, and the men who survived the Red Hat block said that it was crawling with rats, and dinner was served in stinking buckets and splashed onto the floors. So they didn't even really give them a bowl or any kind of utensils to eat with. They just kind of slopped the food on the floor and you on your hands and knees, and you had to, I guess, eat like a piggy.
Wow, like stories we may have heard that viewers may have heard about Burma.
Yeah.
About prisons in Burma.
Yes. I mean, this is recent. Like, there are people still alive who remember the cell hat block. So, but getting back to what we're actually talking about today, because don't worry, Brian, I'm sure you know what I'm about to say about this. I have a future episode planned about the Red Hat block. It's all fine. I just wanted to mention that today.
Yeah, the structure's still there, pretty much.
It's now used as a dog kennel.
Yeah. So it's still being used for what it is, except
it's probably better.
It was always suited as a dog kennel, apparently. So they kind of admitted that.
That's true. All right. So now the entire year of 1999 was kind of a banner year for prison breakouts at Angola.
In January, 4 murderers serving life sentences at Angola took a maintenance man hostage and escaped. The inmates were Roy McFall, Daryl Kreider, Donald Woolley, and Jerry Davis. They made it through the prison gates to a water tower where they ditched a truck and tied up the maintenance supervisor with duct tape. Then they fled on foot. It only took minutes for the hostage to free himself, and he alerted the nearest guard post. By then, the inmates had about a half-hour head start. Law enforcement immediately set up roadblocks, and the prison's chase team, armed with night vision goggles, thermal detectors, and packs of dogs, launched a recovery effort. Okay, I think everybody knows exactly what night vision goggles are, but what are thermal detectors?
Okay, that detects heat signatures.
Is it like, but like, how does it work? I mean, I imagine these days we would fly a drone, but this was 1999, so there were no drones. So, like, what was the mechanism?
Well, you use a helicopter,
Okay.
but essentially, you see, with even night vision goggles will not, of course, will not reveal to you if someone is behind cover or some type of concealment.
Okay.
So, if you can pick up their heat signature using a thermal device, then yeah, you will see a human heat signature. It's in a rudimentary shape of a person.
Okay. It would be a 15-year-old boy named Matt Tibbetts who would lead police to their capture. He was deer hunting alone on his family's property and saw two of the inmates sitting in the woods. He was unaware of the prison break and he kept walking, which thank goodness, because this could have turned out a lot worse than it did. But a short while later, his brother in law, who had heard of the escape, went to go find Matt in the woods. The pair then alerted law enforcement, and they were soon on the trail of Roy McFall and Jerry Davis. According to Jerry Davis, McFall said to him, "I'm not going back to prison. They're about to catch us." McFall shot himself in the head and later died at the hospital, Charity Hospital in New Orleans. He was airlifted there. The rest of the inmates were captured without incidents. Then later that year, December 28th, 1999, also at Angola, there was a bungled escape attempt that ended after a 2-hour hostage standoff. An Angola employee named Captain David Knaps was beaten to death with a hammer when he refused to give up his keys to 6 prisoners. All of those prisoners were also serving life without parole. So these were people who literally had nothing to lose. They were in there for life without parole. Okay. And I mean, not that they were nice people, right? But they were willing to beat a prison guard to death.
So yes, apparently those were like every lifer has nothing to lose, but those uh, evil beings were the kinds of lifers who refused to grow past what they were when they entered prison. Refused to pick up a Bible and participate in prison Bible discussion, which takes place in every single prison in the United States. So they refused to repent, they refused to atone, and they made hell their second choice. Apparently, now yes, I'm getting religious here, but I mean realistically, if you're a lifer in prison, religious salvation is one of the only things that's available for you, and these horrible people decided that not only did they want to escape, but it was worth committing another murder for.
And I also want to remind everybody that this prison is out in more or less the wilderness of Louisiana. It is surrounded on 3 sides by the Mississippi River, right? And then after that, the other side is just woods, right? So you would have, it's not like you could just, walk down the street and hail a cab or call an Uber or something. Like, you really have to know how to get around the river or get through the woods. And you would probably need some sort of contingency plan after that, right? Like you would need to maybe have somebody come pick you up, somebody that or something. And like as far as I know, I couldn't find anything about any plans that they would have had beyond breaking out of the prison.
It was obviously a very desperate effort. They were probably hoping to get lucky and find someone stopped with some kind of vehicle.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, they would very likely just steal a car.
Yeah, they would hope to be lucky enough to just find somebody who just happened to be out that way
Right.
and stopped, or con somebody who's driving by into stopping for them.
Mm. But that's still luck. And then what do you do beyond that? You can't just go to a hotel. You don't have any money. You're a convict. So then what? Like you rob a bank and you know what I'm saying? I'm just saying that like it just doesn't feel like it feels like that this was an entire waste of time on not only the parts of like the prison employees, right? But also on the inmates. It's like, I mean, or unless they were bored enough to just say, "Hey, let's break out of prison and see what happens."
It was a half baked scheme.
Yeah. But of course, I'm a little bit of a planner, so I think about things like that. Now, on this night, on December 28th, at about 8:30 p.m., Sergeant Radia Walker noticed Captain Knapp struggling with several prisoners near one of the buildings. Walker sounded the alarm and ran to help, but she said that another guard, Lieutenant Douglas Cheney, were taken hostage along with Captain Knapp, and they were held hostage at knife point in a classroom in the one of the prison educational buildings.
Was that knife a shank?
It does not say.
It was probably a crude knife that was made by an inmate.
Probably so.
Which it's called a shank.
Yes, yes, that is a well, yes, because I don't think that they can't just go grab a steak knife from the cafeteria,
No,
and it certainly wasn't a butter knife.
no, they're not even allowed butter knives.
Because they could file it down into a shank.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and they always they check for all the spoons.
Oh,
too.
right, yeah.
Because you could make a spoon into a shank too.
Well, you mean like the handle end, right? Like not the rounded end you put in your mouth. You're
Oh,
talking about
you
the
could
handle,
sharpen the hand the end you put in your mouth. You could sharpen that too.
right? Okay.
It still has edges.
Oh,
They're very dull edges, but you could do something with it.
that's true. But you see, I don't think that way. Because to me, a spoon is a spoon, and not something that I should have to sharpen down. Because I'm allowed access to
Well,
knives.
inmates become inventive
I guess you have
behind
to be.
bars.
That's true. Yeah. Uh, at the time, the warden was Burl Kane. When he arrived, he was backed by the prison's tactical team and began negotiating with the prisoners. One of the prisoners, Joel Durham, said, "I've got nothing to lose. I came here as a young man and I'm going to die in prison." But Kane said, "It'll be all right and we will work it out." And it was this time when the Durham replied, "You haven't looked in the bathroom," and he was referring to the corpse of Captain Knapp's. After a 2-hour standoff and after discovering Captain Knapp's body, the tactical team tossed a percussion grenade into the classroom and stormed the hostage takers. Denham lunged at Sergeant Walker with a knife, and one of the officers shot him twice in the chest and once between the eyes and killed him instantly. Another prisoner, David Mathis, was shot in the bottom of his lip, but he survived. 2 days after this incident, a state judge signed arrest warrants for the surviving 5 prisoners, accusing each of them of first-degree murder and aggravated kidnapping. Captain Knaps was part of a large family of prison guards. His father, 5 of his siblings, 2 of his children, and his fiance were all either current or former Angola staffers. He was the first guard to die at Angola since 1972 when Brent Miller was stabbed in a dormitory. Angola, for the year of 1999, was the scene of an increasing number of troubling incidents. Aside from the 2 prison breaks, in November, 4 death row prisoners escaped by sawing through cell bars with smuggled hacksaw blades, but were caught on the prison grounds as they headed towards the Mississippi River with a makeshift raft. So you see, they planned a little bit ahead. Those guys, and they didn't kill or hurt anybody while escaping.
Yeah, so that's the benefits of a good plan.
Yes.
Although even a good plan for an escape from Angola has a very low chance of success.
As we keep seeing, because they keep getting caught.
Yeah, it's a difficult area to escape from because, of course, you not only have to escape from the prison, but you have to escape from this pretty barren area.
Right. Now, 10 days before the incident in December, the Baton Rouge Sunday Advocate had published a long article outlining how security lapses and collusion by prison guards had led to an alarming increase in violent incidents at the prison. They citing internal prison documents. The newspaper reported another recent incident where a prisoner with a 6-inch long knife walked out of the main prison building and into another part of the complex where he almost stabbed a guard before he was overpowered. So these are lapses in security too.
Yeah, when you have lapses in security, and inmates will discover these lapses, and you mistreat prisoners as well.
Yeah.
Okay, the mistreatment of prisoners causes unrest and makes prisoners more likely to riot or attempt escapes.
Right.
Okay. In general, every prison guard, every prison member of the prison staff is better off sticking to procedures, laws, and rules, and making sure to take care of the 3 C's: care, custody, control.
Right.
All with a professional attitude.
Right.
No, it does not help any member of a prison staff to be malicious, to have a malicious attitude towards inmates.
Right. And I'd also imagine, because here's what I think. Prisons do not have nice people in them. They're inmates. They're there for reasons. Okay. If you are and the population of the inmates is always going to outnumber the guards and the staff, right?
Right.
So if you mistreat enough prisoners and you get enough of them angry, they can very easily overrun the staff.
If they're all motivated as a team,
right,
to fearlessly act and fearlessly rush the staff. That's one way of doing it.
Yes.
During which other avenues get, if everyone's at their post, everyone else is at their post. They lock avenues of access
right
from that area. They lock the place down. But not only part of the care part and part of the control part. Okay, one key part of the control part is not only members of the prison staff acting professional and without malice, but also this may sound strange to people who've never worked in a prison or never served time in a prison, but staff members should show respect to the inmates, regardless of what the inmates are in there for. Okay. And despite the fact that, of course, many of these people are not really deserving of your respect, okay,
Right.
but they should receive the message that you do respect them so that they will return the respect to you. Okay, that helps you to control the inmates.
Well, it's also been proven that if you, for example, if you are interrogating somebody and you treat them badly, they're going to lie to you. They just want you to stop you treating them badly, right?
Right.
If you're kind to them, they're going to open up to you. If you give them a steak dinner, or if you say, "Oh, well, you've been here for like 3 hours. Would you like to have a phone call and maybe call your wife or your mom or somebody to let them know what's going on?" You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like kindness, you catch more flies with honey.
Yes, that's true. And it's, kindness from a corrections officer can simply be uh, extension of common courtesies.
Exactly.
You come on the ship. Good evening.
You don't have to give them your phone number.
Right. You don't have to do special things for them or do special privileges. Just do your job with a professional demeanor and a good attitude.
Right.
And treat the inmates like human beings, which they are, regardless of what got them in there. And most of them will either return the gesture, okay, will respect you in return, or will make sure that the very few inmates who really don't care and have a very bad attitude will keep them in line.
Right.
Like, for a classic example, okay, inmate who has your respect, or so let's say 5 inmates who have your respect, just might turn to an inmate who's trying to give you a who's giving you a bad attitude and is trying to ruin your day, and say, "Hey, look, don't mess with him.
Right.
He's good people." Something like that.
It reminds me, kind of reminds me of that time when. Do you remember when we were at that Saints game? It was Saints versus Giants, and the Giants lost pretty badly. And there was that Giants fan who was sitting a couple of rows below us, and there was like a drunk Saints fan who was near us, and he started to try to pick on the Giants fan, and I like looked at the drunk guy. I'm like, leave him alone. He's here. He's not bothering you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was all because um, he was hearing this from another Saints fan.
Right.
You
Right.
see, so you were able to get his ear because he considered you to be
more authoritative because I am a Saints fan.
Yeah. She's one of us.
Right.
Type
right.
of deal, and you probably maybe you gave him a second or two to think about it.
Well, it was senseless. Look, the guy, the Giants fan, was still sitting there, even though his team was losing badly. He was staying until the end of the game.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, and I can respect that. When you go to a visiting fan stadium, your team is getting beaten up, and you're still staying to the end.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, enough about that. That's kind of off course. But yeah, like the exam, but more flies with honey, people. More flies with honey.
Yeah, and you minimize what the few malcontents who are always malcontent and wanting to move against the prison staff. Generally, at any given time, that's an extreme minority of a percentage point of the prison population. You see, so sticking to the 3 C's: care, custody, control, with a professional attitude and respect for these fellow human beings will keep the majority of the inmates in line, and they will make sure that the few malcontents are under control as well.
Right. Now, of course, that's not to say, that's not going to stop certain people from continuously trying certain things, right? Like Charlie Frazier escaped from prison 18 times. You had, one of the groups of inmates that I mentioned on this show today we're willing to kill somebody.
Right.
You know?
The Charlie Fraziers, of course, fall into the category of the malcontents who will never adapt to a life behind bars, who will never discover the life that you actually can have behind bars.
Right.
So they're always willing to plot something and carry something out, and they're always looking for help and co-conspirators.
Right.
So if you're treating the general prison population like crap, then it's going to be easy for malcontents to recruit co-conspirators. And then you've got a bigger problem than having to babysit adults for 12 hours out of your day.
Right. And I also do want to acknowledge that it's not easy to wrangle adults. For example, if you're an adult education instructor or a college professor, right? You're still trying to wrangle adults, okay? Because college students are adults. It's doubly hard to do so if this is not a nice portion of the population that is in prison. It's even more difficult to wrangle adults in that situation.
Yeah, and these are adults who don't want to be there.
Right. Yes.
Now there's a small number. Interestingly enough, in contrast to the malcontents, there's a very small number of inmates who actually feel at home in jail.
I mean, 3 hots and a cot, right?
Yeah.
You always, you know that you're going to get fed. You know that you have a bed and you have a roof over your head.
And you don't have to do much of anything for it. Although, well, of course, the hard labor in Angola, that's kind of different.
It's very different. It's different than maybe being in a federal prison, which, are there hard labor federal prisons?
No.
Okay. So don't commit any crimes, but if you're going to commit crimes, commit a federal one so you go to a better prison.
but don't make it a big federal crime, because then you could go to a minimum security prison.
And make sure they can only get you on one charge.
Yeah. Yeah. If you get hauled into federal court, you better not have a public defender.
Oh yeah.
Because you need at that point you'll need a good lawyer, because chances are some of the counts that an assistant U.S. attorney tosses at you are actually a load of crap.
Right.
And you need a lawyer to get rid of some of those counts for you, to argue before a judge, in which case you probably want a judge trial versus a jury trial if you have to get rid of some of the counts that are against you.
Yes.
Because just like a state prosecutor can do this, but an assistant federal attorney can get pretty inventive
and
on charges and literally charge. Some of the counts you're charged with might not actually be crimes, and it sounds bizarre, but it's a matter of interpretation of the law, which might actually be considered erroneous by a federal judge. But you have to be able to argue this.
And it also goes into what we've said before, is that if you are arrested for something, don't say anything. The cops are not your friends. Federal investigators are not your friends. If you have committed a crime and you know what you've done, okay, you know what you did, and you get arrested for it, don't say anything.
It's even possible that if you tell the police what you did and you believe that what you did to be legal, the police officer's interpretation of the legality might be entirely different from yours.
Right.
So, theoretically, you could confess to a crime you didn't commit under police interrogation. Especially if let's say you did something, you made an innocent mistake, you didn't know it was illegal, you confessed to it. You may not even know you confessed to it, which is why, you're being investigated for a crime. Shut your mouth.
Yeah.
And get an attorney.
And that's mostly rich people justice. I think I've said this before on the podcast, but that's what rich people justice actually is. They're quiet. They let their lawyers talk for them. Now, if you yourself can't afford an attorney that a rich person could afford, your best defense is still being quiet.
Yes.
Okay. And I think that those are my final thoughts, as this turned into an episode that was half about a prison break and half about sort of legal advice. Do you have any final thoughts before we finish up today?
It looks like I pretty much gave my final thoughts for anyone who wants to work in a prison. Or for anyone who, just in case they end up in prison, pretty much. But it seems like prison, pretty much every prison that's had a riot is the staff of that prison is not exactly innocent. Okay.
Good point.
Riots don't just happen because a large number of the prison population just feels like doing it.
Right. It's not like they don't want to watch TV.
Right. It's not like they don't want to eat, and it's not like they don't want to take naps and read books that people send them, or books from the prison library. They don't want to. Oh no, they don't want to read letters. They don't want to write letters. They don't want to go to sleep at night and rest peacefully, because of course, when everyone's sleeping, that's the most peaceful time of the day in a prison, obviously. No, the riots happen because of poor conditions in the prison and mistreatment, and then that's when the small number of malcontents know they have an opportunity.
Right.
You see, don't want to really go into this, okay, but just to make a comparison, okay, the treatment of Germany after World War One, and then finally combined with a world depression,
is what
allowed a small number of psychotic malcontents in Germany take over
to gain the foothold and become the Nazi Party.
Right. They went from 1% of the German parliament to a majority overnight after the Depression.
Well, I am going to make a good assumption here. I'm going to assume that our audience is intelligent, and that they they understood that example very well.
Yes.
Because that is an apt and historical comparison that anybody with even a passing familiarity with history can understand.
Yeah.
Well, next week we're going to be talking about the times when we went to Angola prison, not as inmates, but as tourists.
Yes, when Tracy went there in high school, when I went there in college as part of my corrections process class.
And I went there because at one point in my life I thought I wanted to be an attorney. And I took a pre-law class in high school. And it took that class for me to realize I don't actually want to be an attorney.
Whereas I had my corrections process class before I even worked in a prison. And so, yes, my visit to Angola was before I even worked at Orleans Parish Prison.
So, dear listeners, until next time, be safe, be kind, and don't park next to vans.
And if it's dark, if it's dangerous, if it's unsafe, don't be there in the first place. And if you're talking to law enforcement of any kind, and you are not the victim of a crime or the witness to a crime, lawyer up.